Sure. So February 1st, 2003, I was actually on call that weekend, and it was early in the morning. We had looked at the online data from NASA and was able to calculate that there was a pretty good chance that the Space Shuttle Columbia was going to try and make a re-entry in the next hour or so, and that would bring them right over East Texas if they came in on that orbit. If they came in on the orbit after that, then we wouldn't have seen anything. It would have been out over the Gulf of Mexico. And so we calculated the time and figured out it would be right at about 8 o'clock in the morning our time. Went out with the camera, my son and my wife, and she had a little video camera. I had a still camera, a digital still. And my son had a pair of binoculars, and right on time, the contrail of the re-entering shuttle came over from west to east, flying roughly from Dallas towards us. And initially, to the naked eye, it didn't look like anything in particular had gone on, but my wife makes a comment on the video screen that she's looking at, is it supposed to look like it's breaking up like that? And I didn't really see that through the camera. It was too small of a target. I thought I saw some parallel contrails, but we made a few pictures with the zoom lens, with a wide angle and back to a zoom lens, and then actually went back into the house. And about 4.5 minutes later, the sonic booms came in. Although it wasn't the classic sonic boom with the two thuds, it was a large envelope of sound. A lot of people who heard it that morning thought a train had derailed in the yard or a propane tank had blown up. It was a pretty loud noise, but it lasted as a rumble for a good 15 to 20 seconds. Then I went and started looking at the photographs, and at that point realized that the images did show the breakup of the space shuttle. We could see multiple fragmentation. You could see all of the large components of it sort of traveling in parallel, but falling apart. And sure enough, that's what the cropped up images of the pictures showed us. That sort of prompted me to get in touch with the news sources, the paper, the TV stations, and to go and start moving the video and the images.
So yeah, obviously we know what happened with the picture. Kind of walk me through you giving that picture to everyone.
Sure.
And obviously, you know what
So
happened.
we first, actually we made it all to y'all station first, and we made it to the newspaper. Well, we went to your station first. We went, did a little interview. We uploaded the stills, and we uploaded, well, we tried to upload the video. I showed them the video, but believe it or not, they didn't have the connectors to connect a little home video. They didn't have the B&C plugs to plug in your home video to re-record it onto beta. So I kind of ran over to the newspaper. We uploaded the pictures there, and they forwarded them to the Associated Press. I ran home, got the B&C connectors that KLTV needed, went back to the station, and Joe chatted with me, and one of your other anchors at the time chatted with me. We uploaded the video there, and then they moved the video onto the ABC network. Went back over to the newspaper, and by that time the Associated Press had seen the images and wanted to make acquisition of them for the purposes of putting them out and transmitting them.
When you look at all that, I mean, what does it make you think that your picture is the face of this?
It's always been humbling to me. I mean, it's obviously an incredibly sad story. You know, I grew up in the era where the space shuttle was, and the space program in general, was important to me. You know, the going to the moon was part of my childhood, just as it's going to be part of everyone's childhood next week, with any luck. And so, you know, this was always something I was looked into and have had an interest in. And so it was very sad to sort of see what had happened here. But on the side of getting this image moved, it was incredibly humbling, the extent and the speed at which this picture made it around the world. The Associated Press estimated that we had 12 to 1,400 front pages in newspapers. But their other number that was fantastic was, from just a size perspective, was that 2.4 billion people likely saw this image in the first news cycle, in the first 24 hours. We were on the front page of pretty nearly every newspaper in the world in China, in Australia, throughout Europe, the Middle East. Just about everywhere, this was the image that was on the news, on the few websites that existed at that time, and on the news, and in the local newspapers when places had daily local newspapers. The gravity of the image was always, what it was always to me was it was kind of telling. I mean, people always describe this as being this beautiful image of this bright white thing against the blue sky, and such a pretty image of telling such a horrible tragedy that was going on. And then people tell me, oh, well, you were in the right place at the right time. And I've always said, no, I was in the right place at the wrong time. This was a tragedy. But the importance of the science that the space program has always developed, it's always been worth the risk. And the people who were lost in this tragedy knew that. The importance of what these people were doing for us in terms of of pushing the science forward was always very useful. It's useful for what we do in medicine. So much of the technology that we use on a daily basis now and over the last 30 years are direct results of our efforts to go to the moon, of what we've done in the space station, what we've done with the space shuttle program, and with the science development in the space program in general. And everyone sits there and goes, well, why did we bother to do this? And I said, we do this because it helped develop all of the technologies that allow us to have CAT scans and MRIs and a lot of the things that we do in cardiology that are direct descendant technologies from the space program that were developed for that. Even things as simple as Velcro. Velcro was really developed for the space program, and think of how many applications people use that for at home. And so I appreciate the sacrifice that these astronauts did for us. I think it's important to remember how important these people were for the science of the science that they were developing, the technologies that they were bringing forth to help really everybody.
Mm-hmm. Walk me through, you kind of talked about how everyone thought there was explosions, but kind of walk me through what everyone thought was going on, kind of what was happening on the ground.
Well, initially a lot of people didn't know because when you finally heard the sound was 4.5, 5 minutes later. You went outside and all you saw was this contrail in the sky that looked like a jet had come through. An ionization trail didn't look much different than a contrail, and it cleared after another 5-10 minutes after that. Other than that, it was there for a long time because it was very high up in the atmosphere. The sound didn't sound like a sonic boom. It really sounded like this envelope of noise, which was really the sonic boom of all of the different components and fragments slowing down at different speeds and creating different sonic boomlets, so to speak. And so most people didn't know what happened. I mean, most people heard the noise, went outside. By the time they heard it, they didn't see anything going on. A few people saw it as it streaked across the sky. I knew a few people who were eyewitnesses to seeing it as well, but most of them didn't know what it was or thought it was a meteor or something like that. And it certainly could have looked like that, both for the sound and the appearance. But if people didn't know that there was supposed to be a shuttle re-entering. I mean, people were not aware that this was due that day or at that time. And so it was, I think, very much a kind of shock to a lot of people that this was going on. There was some fog over the lakes in East Texas, and a lot of this debris went into Lake Sam Rayborn and in that area. I had some patients that I've had that were telling me they were out on fishing boats and they could hear the splashes in the water around them in the lake. And they couldn't see anything, but because it was foggy, but they could hear splashes in various areas. I had another patient who was flying an aircraft and they cracked a windshield. They had flown into some debris. And people forget how big a debris field this was because some small parts started coming off in California. There were parts of the shuttle that were found from New Mexico, obviously here into East Texas. But then a lot of the lightweight debris and papers and stuff like that from inside the shuttle were actually carried on the jet stream all the way to western New York and Pennsylvania. So there were little pieces and fragments that were scattered literally across the country from this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the photo obviously depicts a terrible tragedy. How does that speak versus the response? I mean, I've told everyone at our station has a story about the response, the people picking up debris, people feeding each other. I mean, what does that photo say versus how this community kind of went through in the weeks after?
Well, I mean, the photo, I think, at least let people see what had happened. Without the video footage that had been obtained by myself and others, without the still images, the story wouldn't have been complete. We wouldn't have really known what had happened in those minutes. The picture certainly became an iconic image to sort of put a stamp on what this story was. It sort of let you think about the crew and the situation and the disaster at that particular moment in time. It certainly brought, I think, the community together to help find the remains. I mean, there was a huge search effort to both find the fragments, the pieces, to find out what had happened to the shuttle. And for that, NASA needed to recover as much of the space shuttle as they could. They obviously wanted the remains of the astronauts, and there was a huge search and rescue effort, or search and recovery effort, to find all of that. And they were pretty successful in those endeavors. And with putting together the most of the debris out at Barksdale Air Force Base, once they accumulated the stuff, they were able to sort of sit there and piece together, what appeared to have happened, what led to this disaster, and then use the next, no-fly interval to sort of try and mitigate and prevent this from happening again.
What stands out most to you about that day?
Well, on a personal level, the use of digital images and the ability for a digital image to travel as fast as it did, I think, was telling. One of the lead photo editors at the Associated Press had pointed out to me that while the picture at Iwo Jima was an important photograph, it took 36 to 48 hours for that image to be digitalized, focused, transmitted, and distributed in the U.S. This picture literally was out of the camera and in the offices at the AP in Washington, D.C. Within a half hour of the event. It was in the newspapers pretty much around the world within an hour of the event happening, which, and even in 2003, was kind of remarkable. Digital photography was relatively new. I think the story of the picture itself, not of necessarily the content, sort of pointed out that the future was going to be in digital imaging and digital photography, and the speed at which a sharp, clear image of history in process was going to be able to be moved as fast as it was. To me, the emotional impact that this picture had, that so many people, so many newspaper editors, the people that made the decisions of what should go on their front pages, all made the same decision, that they believed that this was the image that was going to tell the story and had the most impact. And that became very apparent to me, that digital photography was going to become one of the more powerful tools of news storytelling.
Yeah. How was that image? I mean, it's everywhere. It's got to be everywhere. You tell me you've done this millions of times. How is this, pierced you? How has it done that to you?
It opened up a different world to me. I mean, the net result of this image were the people I've come to know and the friends I've made in the news business. the connections I've made. It opened an entree for me to use photography for storytelling and use the AP as an outlet. I've had, probably 1,000 images moved on the AP wire since the shuttle picture. I've gotten to cover football games and racing and celebrity photography and done a lot of that. And so for me personally, it opened up a whole new world of storytelling, of being able to use a creative talent to sort of bring the world to people, and to use my eye to try and capture images that would have the same kind of emotional impact. I don't think much of what I could photograph since then would have either the widespread impact or power of that first picture. But I've had a lot of pictures that have meant a lot to different people at different times, and it's been gratifying that's been helpful.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think it's important on these anniversaries to sort of just sit back and remember the sacrifices that people have made in the space program, both with the Columbia and as well as the Challenger and the Apollo 1 crew, and as well as all of the other not as well known people that sacrificed or risked everything to sort of help develop the technologies that have brought us aviation and the sciences and the technologies we use in medicine and everywhere else. I think this is a good time to sort of sit back and remember that freedom is not always free, and pushing science is not always free either.
Mm-hmm. Do you go back and change anything?
Oh, I'd rather the crew made it. Really would. But you can't. There are things you can't change, and at least I do know that for some of the family members who I've spoken to, that the picture gave them at least a sense of closure. They had an idea of what had happened and could picture it, and for better or worse, it gave them some sense of closure.